Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Empires by T.R. Harris, narrated by Perry Daniels. Prologue. Captain Kurt Bauer walked onto the bridge of the Naples at 0630 hours, holding a steaming serving of black coffee in a metal flask before sliding into his command seat and settling in for another day of patrol duty in the dead zone. "What's our status, Dan?" the captain asked, as his XO stepped up to the chair. Commander Dan Madden had relieved the night watch only minutes before. "Nothing much to report, sir," Madden answered. He referenced a small data pad in his hand. "Pressure on the port side aft air exchanger is down 5%. I have a team looking into it. Shielding is nominal and the focusing rings are within tolerance. Master Chief Stokes has his people scheduled to begin maintenance on the Wainwright coils at 0900 hours, right after the morning's festivities. It shouldn't affect the comms much." "And our friend?" "Still out there, although he slipped within 200,000 clicks of the ship overnight. Nothing to be alarmed about, but if he sticks with the routine, he should be cutting across our bow any time in the next half hour, closing in to within 70 or so. We'll be ready." "Good," said the captain. Madden could read the frustration on Bauer's face. "If we'd been in the zone before the Jurian showed up, it would be us shadowing their squadron, rather than the other way around." "I know, but this whole thing seems childish." Madden smirked. "If nothing else, it's giving us plenty of practice at setting GQ. "Sir, aspect change in contact Bravo Charlie," a scope operator reported. Bauer checked the huge clock on the bulkhead. "He's getting an early start. You do the honors, Mr. Madden. Wake up the crew." In reality, the crew was already awake and anticipating the call to general quarters. They'd become acclimated to the routine over the past 20 days, ever since the Naples entered the disputed dead zone and picked up their shadow. The other 7 ships in the squadron had their own dance partners, and each took turns testing the skills and patience of the other. It was the Jurian's turn. In the afternoon, Captain Bauer would initiate his own game of chicken with the Jurian Class 3 warship. It was necessary, as each side was determined to show they had just as much right to be in the region as the other. And the game would continue until either the Orion Cygnus Union or the Jurian expansion claimed the dead zone as their own. If that happened, things would become real, and not just a game. The klaxon blared, followed by a computer recording. "This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Battle stations, battle stations. All hands man your battle stations. Set condition red. Secure the ship. Seal all airtight hatches. Department heads report readiness to the bridge." With a sigh, Captain Bauer lifted from his chair and pulled out the thin environment suit from a slot in the stand. He slipped it on over his khakis, and a moment later had the helmet attached. He clasped a small air tank to the breastplate and engaged the suit. It inflated instantly. "Bridge secure, sir," said Commander Madden. "Very good. Dump the atmosphere." A moment later, the pressure inside the bridge compartment matched that of outside the ship. This way, if the hull were punctured, a catastrophic depressurization explosion wouldn't occur. Bauer watched as seconds were added to a rectangularly shaped green-faced clock along the forward bulkhead. It began running the moment the GQ notice sounded. The screen read nearly 2 minutes. He frowned, as did Madden. Reports continued to filter into the bridge until, at 2 minutes 44 seconds, the ship was declared secure, with stations manned and all atmosphere evacuated. Bauer shook his head. "That's pitiful, Commander. Nearly 3 minutes." "Agreed, Captain," the XO said, his face twisted in anger through the lens of the helmet. "The crew's becoming complacent. They know it doesn't mean anything, and they're getting lazy. "We need to do something about that," said Bauer. "Call a meeting of division heads after we secure. Let's light a fire under some asses." "Aye, sir." "Contact. Bearing 140 degrees. Level plane. Arching to cross course," reported the weapons officer. "Now at 100,000 kilometers and closing." "Weapon status?" asked the XO. "Shields active, and at full strength. Cannon charged. Ballistics and missiles loaded." "Very good, Lieutenant." Captain Bauer looked out the forward viewport at the glow of the planet Anadin, sitting 200,000 kilometers away. His small squadron entered the star system 3 days ago, and was only now approaching the planet. Although it had a name, on all modern charts it was now designated DZ-48, the 48th world in the dead zone, a near lifeless ball of rock that had once been home to a thriving civilization of over 3 billion souls. That was before the mad Eris Creation swept through the region, saturating over 100 planets with deadly neutron radiation, rendering them uninhabitable and initiating the greatest exodus of living beings the galaxy had ever seen. That was nearly 5 years ago, and now the wealth of the Class A planet lay under a veil of radioactivity. Although bathed in radiation, the planet, like all worlds in the dead zone, was being slowly stripped by intrepid salvagers, willing to risk their lives decontaminating small sections of the planet to get to the riches waiting to be reaped. And it was for control of these near-lifeless planets that Bauer and his fellow captains were playing this dangerous game of cat and mouse with the alien warships. His was one of a dozen such squadrons of the Union, demonstrating a show of force within the dead zone, matched by an equal number of Jurian vessels, representing the interests of the expansion. So far, only minor skirmishes had occurred between the two galactic empires. However, the frequency of these events was increasing. Bauer knew both sides were to blame. Although no one wanted an all-out shooting war, neither would relinquish the DZ to the other. It was too rich of an opportunity to let that happen. Control of the dead zone was the new gold rush in the Milky Way galaxy. "He's nearing the red line, Captain," reported the weapons officer. Bauer had set 50,000 kilometers as the closest he'd allow the Jurian to approach. After that, it would be his decision to engage or not. Although he didn't like it, the captain already knew what he would do if the red line were crossed. He wasn't anxious to go down in history as the officer who started another human-Jurian war. He would back down, giving way to the aggression of the alien warship. And everyone knew it, including his crew and the Jurian captain. "Helm, prepare to change course. Ready 080, down 20. Execute on my command." The bridge suddenly filled with a blinding white light, emanating from a single point dead ahead. "Evasive action," Bauer called out. "Accelerate to flank speed. Helm, come to 080, execute." The ship changed course, seeking to avoid the barrage of flash cannon bolts that had just been fired from the enemy vessel. At this range, they would be upon the Naples in less than 3 seconds. "Sir, the Jurian did not fire on us," said the weapons officer through the din of activity on the bridge. "I repeat, they did not fire." "Explain, Mr. Alfonsi." It blew up. The flash came from the Jurian ship exploding, not from flash cannon fire." Bauer stepped over to the station, with Madden at his elbow. Both officers studied the readouts on the screen. Lieutenant Alfonsi was right. The Jurian warship had exploded. "Sir, enemy vessels changing aspect," said a scope operator. "They're lining up on us." "Did we fire?" Bauer asked his weapons officer. No, sir. All batteries fully charged. Nothing came from us. Mr. Forrester, plot an escape route, Bauer said to the navigator. No engagement unless absolutely necessary. Communications. Release buoys every 5 seconds with updates. Let's get this on the record. Release the squadron. More engagement, sir. The Seattle and the San Diego are under attack. They're returning fire. Helm, belay my last. Plot covering vectors. Engage when calculated. Lieutenant Alfonsi, ready your cannon. Aye, sir. Weapons hot. The Naples moved to cover the San Diego. The ship Shadow, another Jurian Class 3 cruiser, had unleashed a salvo of white-hot plasma bolts at the Union ship in response to the destruction of their companion. Now all warships in the Anadin system were engaged. However, with one of the Jurians already gone, this allowed the Naples to go where it was needed most. Unfortunately, the Union warship didn't get a chance to help. Already, 2 of the Jurians had lit off bolts toward the Naples. 4 of them hit the shield straight on, sending one of the panels into the red. A follow-up bolt overloaded the aft portside screen, causing it to fade. "Get that shield back up," Commander Madden yelled. Beyond the bulkhead, to the rear of the bridge, technicians in the Combat Information Center relayed the orders to the damage control teams. Power was rerouted to the shield, and the panel began to glow again, but at only 20% intensity. And that's when another 3 bolts struck the same section of the diffusion screens. The shield dropped completely again, allowing 2 full-force bolts to reach the hull. Metal melted and twin holes opened up. The roiling energy entered the ship and burned through 6 compartments, incinerating crew members and equipment alike. A critical power junction was severed, causing the aft section of the ship to lose shielding. 2 more bolts entered the engine compartment unobstructed, tearing through the gravity generators, auxiliary control, and striking a chemical propellant tank. The death of the Naples occurred in 2 gigantic explosions. The first took out the aft section, while another rolling detonation blew out the forward section, including the bridge. 5 of the Union ships managed to slip into deep gravity wells and bolt from the area. 4 of the Jurians did the same. The battle only lasted 16 minutes, but it resulted in the combined loss of 7 warships and the deaths of 280 crew members, both human and alien alike. Communication buoys were received detailing the brief battle, including archival data showing the explosion of the first Jurian warship. The alert status on both sides of the conflict was raised within the dead zone, and all ships ordered away from their shadows. Neither side was ready to start a major conflict without assessing the situation fully. Leveler heads prevailed, and a temporary truce agreed upon. But a more permanent de-escalation of hostilities would have to be negotiated face-to-face. Delegations were assembled, and ships went off to a neutral location where the critical talks would begin. That neutral location, where it would be decided whether or not the galaxy would go to war, was the planet Lyav 3, and the meeting place for the negotiations was to be in the coastal enclave of Balamar, along a crescent-shaped beach and at a nautical-themed bar and restaurant known as Captain Cain's Bar and Grill. Chapter 1. He would kill an alien today. In fact, more than one. For most people, this would have been extraordinary, even disturbing. But for Adam Cain, it was just another manic Monday. Although Adam Cain didn't set out to kill the aliens, it was becoming more of a habit than an exception. He blamed the region's newfound prosperity for the increase in the figurative notches on his pistol grip. The past year had been good for the businesses run by the Big Three partnership, including Captain Cain's Bar and Grill. Riyadh's outfitting business was also doing better, while Sherry's hotel/brothel/opium den was always full of paying customers. Recently, there'd been an influx of business activity in the coastal town of Balamar. The huge galactic organization Maris Kliss, makers of the ubiquitous line of MK flash weapons, had moved onto Liave 3, with several projects already underway. A mile down Land Road from Adam's Bar, they were building a luxurious resort hotel on the picturesque Crescent Bay. Although the complex wasn't completed, the hundreds of workers spent a fair amount of time at Cain's, drinking his liquor and eating from the varied menu. Most of the workers lived in the nearby city of Canik and were shuttled to and from the worksite. The shuttle now made frequent stops in front of the bar, knowing that some of the workers would make their way to Cain's after a hard day's work before heading back to the urban sprawl of the much larger city. In addition to the resort, MK built a huge warehouse at the Canik spaceport, where they stored gigantic tanks of decontamination foam. The organization was gearing up for an attempt to cleanse the radiation from entire planets in the dead zone in one fell swoop. It was an ambitious project, but trial efforts proved it was possible. Now, dozens of refugee groups were streaming back to the zone, fearing that MK would attempt to claim their former homeworlds for their own once the decontamination was complete. Knowing MK as he did, Adam had no doubt that was their intention. They hadn't become the largest business entity in the galaxy by being magnanimous. MK was also one of the chief investors in an expanded roadway between Canik and Balamar, complete with a long tunnel that ran under the dinosaur migratory trail. When complete, the road would cut the transit time from Canik to the coast to around 10 minutes, aided by the rapid growth of the lawless boomtown toward the more peaceful shoreline community. Soon, the two settlements would link up, and the filth, overcrowding, and crime of Canik would infest beautiful Balamar, even more than it already had. And that was why it was a good bet Adam would kill an alien or two today, during his walk to the nearby bank, to make a deposit of his business receipts. The bank was part of the expansion accounting system, and consisted of a small building with a secure metal vault buried deep into the bedrock. Jury and credits were fed into a system of conveyors and stored where no living being had access to them. For withdrawals, a clerk would punch in an amount, and the credit chips would be automatically pulled from the vault and transferred to the surface. All transactions were immediately logged into the expansion system, keeping them safe from theft. The security at the bank was why most crooks chose to attack the bank patrons outside the structure, rather than rob the bank itself. It was such a common occurrence that Adam made the short walk with a resigned attitude, knowing someone would make a move. Unfortunately for the attackers, Adam Cain was not the alien you wanted to rob. A few days before, Adam had a new 6-round, long-barrel 45 caliber revolver shipped in from Earth, which he now wore holstered around his waist and tied to his right thigh. Sure, it was a little old-fashioned, even by Earth standards, being neither a semi-automatic, magazine-fed handgun nor an energy weapon, such as 99% of all alien species used. But he liked the retro feel of the weapon, as well as the intimidating sound it produced. The incredible bang associated with the weapon would be enough to wake up the town and announce to all within earshot that the humans were not to be messed with. The locals knew this already. It was the riffraff filtering in from Canik that had to be constantly taught the lesson. Adam always made his walk during daylight, which had turned into a spectator event. The workers and regulars at the 3 restaurants he passed along the way nodded at him, nervous grins on their faces. They didn't relish the violence and death that was invading their once tranquil town, but there was little they could do about it. Perhaps from Adam's frequent deadly demonstrations, word would get out about the perils of engaging in such deviant and pointless behavior, making their own trips to the bank less of a challenge. So Adam Cain wasn't surprised when a pair of stocky, yellow-skinned beings appeared from the foliage along the side of the road, blocking his path to the bank 50 yards away. They wore standard MK-17s around their waists, and their clothing was dirty and tattered. Adam felt a presence behind him and turned slightly to notice a third would-be assailant approaching from behind. This was ambitious. 3 against 1. They must know Adam carried a fair amount of credits with him to the bank. With the increase in business at Cain's, he had over 2,000 credits on him, which would be a fortune to these 3. He stopped. His body turned sideways so he could keep watch front and back. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked the pair blocking his path. "Give us the credits and you will not be hurt," said one of the aliens. His hand was on the butt of his weapon. He began to pull it from the holster. "I can't do that, so why don't you just move on? I've already killed my quota of assholes for the week." The aliens frowned, losing meaning in the translation. "Give us the credits," the alien repeated. Adam looked to his right. The alien behind him was drawing his weapon. It was nearing lunchtime and Adam was hungry. Reasoning that diplomacy with the robbers wasn't going to work, he let out a deep sigh and went for his gun. The 3 aliens already had their weapons out of their holsters, bringing them level and engaging the targeting computers. Adam's .45 was out of its holster in the blink of an eye later. He aimed it at the alien to the rear and pulled the trigger. The report was deafening, and the heavy slug tore into the tender flesh of the alien, throwing him back 10 feet in the light gravity of Liave 3. Then, before the targeting computers on the other 2 MKs could lock on, Adam had the long barrel pistol shooting flame and angry sound at the other assailants. The aliens were blasted away with a pair of accurate, near-simultaneous gunshots, each center mass. As the last breath drained from the robbers, Adam took a few steps closer to the bodies, the barrel of the .45 aimed at the bloody corpses. There was no doubt they were dead. Soft alien flesh was no match for human ballistic rounds, especially not from a .45. With the revolver, there was no burning of flesh or electric discharge as with energy weapons. Instead, rapidly expanding pools of blood filled the gaping holes left in the chests of his attackers. With his daily chore complete, Adam did a quick twirl of his new gun, using the trigger guard and his index finger, Old West style. Unfortunately, he didn't quite pull it off. The barrel of the .45 ended upside down and pointed back at him, leaving him awkwardly fumbling with the weapon. He corrected the grip and placed the gun back in the holster, embarrassed, knowing people were watching. He grimaced. He would have to practice the move when he returned to the bar. Adam stepped over one of the bodies and continued to the bank, knowing there would be no police coming to investigate, no coroner to remove the bodies. Vagrants would strip the dead of their clothing and valuables, and overnight, various rodents and small dinosaurs would drag the bodies into the nearby jungle to feed upon. There was no law on Liave 3, only the law of the jungle, and in this jungle there was no creature more dangerous than a human late for lunch. Chapter 2. When Adam returned from his deposit run, he found Riyadh Tarazi and Sherry Valentine at the long, polished bar at Cain's, chatting with their 2 alien friends, Kaylor and Jim. "I take it those were your fireworks we heard?" Riyadh asked. There was a real bread and meat sandwich sitting in front of him, something unique to Cain's, and not spit out of a food processor. "So how many does that make?" Sherry asked, as she took a bite of her own sandwich. Jim set a plate in front of Adam as he slid onto a bar stool. "This week or in total?" Sherry smirked. "Never mind," she mumbled with her mouth full of food. "Overall, it has to be in the millions by now." Adam nodded. "Sure, when you count the planets we've destroyed along the way. Remember Noor?" "That would make it billions," Riyadh said. He shrugged. "It's a good start." "Hey, we never killed an alien who didn't deserve it." "Sorta." "Let's not even go there," Sherry said. "So how do you like your six-shooter, Wyatt?" "It's great." Adam grinned. "It was pretty loud, wasn't it? Even for me." Adam and the other humans at the bar noticed as a cloud came over Kalor's light blue face. They turned in their seats, following the alien's gaze toward the front door of the bar. A flamboyantly dressed alien with silver-white hair had just entered. He came unescorted and with a mischievous grin on his dark face. Adam took a quick bite of his sandwich before leaving the bar to greet the visitor. He didn't want to face Dal Division on an empty stomach, although a single bite wouldn't do much. "My friend Adam Cain, it has been too long," said the alien. "Not long enough, if you ask me." Dal was the founder of the city of Canik and the top gangster on Liave 3. He and Adam had had their share of run-ins over the 2 years the humans had been on the planet, and any time he showed up at Adam's door, trouble soon followed. "May we sit? I have some news to impart." Adam shrugged. Dal had a lot of clout on the planet. He also controlled the fuel module franchise on L3, making it necessary to deal with him to keep Riyadh's small fleet of salvage rentals moving through the dead zone. Adam waved at a table and chair, and they sat down. "Make it quick, I'm in the middle of lunch." Dal looked past Adam to his friends at the bar, who were watching the alien with contempt painted on their faces. He waved them a greeting. None returned the gesture. Dal turned his attention to Adam, his expression serious. "I am sure you are aware of the recent incident between the expansion and the Union within the Anadin system." "Of course, who hasn't?" "Indeed. It has set tensions on high throughout the entire zone. As has been evident for the past few years, there is potential for a serious flare-up of hostilities between the major powers in the galaxy, and all focused on defenseless Liave 3. As the most settled and civilized of the remaining few non-radioactive worlds in the dead zone, L3 was the de facto capital of the region. The fact that it had no government or system of laws also made it extremely vulnerable to outside forces. "I have come here to tell you that investigators and negotiators from both sides are coming to our planet to work on a resolution to the hostilities. They will arrive in 10 days. "That sounds reasonable," Adam said. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because they have chosen Captain Cain's as the location for these negotiations." Adam recoiled. "Bullshit. No one has said anything to me." "I am now." "No, seriously. No one checked with me first. You can't just assume I'd say yes. Besides, we're too small, and security here is crap. No way. It would interfere with my business. We're just getting back on our feet after the last fiasco you pulled with the superweapons." "But the parties insist. They want Cain's." Adam shook his head. "Why not use one of your places? You have a lot more to choose from, and most are bigger." "I offered, my friend," said Dal. However, they insist on coming to the coast. Canuck is not where they wish to...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?